Hello everyone. My name is Joydeep Das. I'm having 12 years of business intelligence data warehouse experience. Right now, I'm working in Europe, in Belgium, in a Microsoft, predominantly Microsoft consulting firm from Element 61. So, Element 61 is the gold partner of Microsoft for providing best-in-class modern data platform solutions towards our various customers. And I have been working initially in the on-premise BI tools like Informatica, Data Stage, Ab Initio, Teradata, Oracle, and so on for reporting MicroStrategy. And then in last 2-3 years, I have shifted my focus towards Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure, as some of you might know, it has a tremendous uh, market interest and it has tremendous potential for providing best-in-class BI solutions, not only BI, but best-in-class cloud solutions that is there. And it is one of the three big cloud providers aside AWS and Google. So moving in, so today's session is mostly focused on Azure Data Factory and Synapse. The goal of this session is to give you a very high level overview because these two tools, let's say they are two main tools in the modern data platform. That in any cloud solution that any cloud BI solution that Microsoft would provide. It is impossible that in 1 hour we cover each and everything and go too much in detail. But then the idea is that I try to give all the topics that you should be aware of. I'm not sure how to make this session more interactive, Gavaskar. So do we take questions at the end or do we take
Yeah.
questions, let's say,
Questions we can take it at end. No, we can have a Q&A session, and during that time we can take that.
okay, fine. Or if there is an immediate question, then you can let me know.
Yes,
So
yes,
that
yes,
I can
yes.
answer. Yeah. All right. So I think people who are from BI background in this call, I would assume that most of you are. Then normally all the companies, all the organizations across the world, they want to become data-driven company. They want to take their decisions based on their data, based on their data in data warehouse, or based on their data in a real-time data lake, something like that. So first of all, we should understand where do we need this Azure Data Factory and Azure Synapse Analytics in the modern data platform. So if an organization is building a modern data platform, what is the significance that these two tools will provide? That is what we need to understand. We will look into the modern data platform architecture. What do I mean by modern data platform architecture? And then Azure Data Factory and Azure Synapse Analytics, as such, they are not new, and it is not something that people wouldn't know. It is very popular. Two most popular tools probably in any BI solutions provided by Microsoft nowadays. So there are a lot of tons and tons of documentations available, tutorials available, blog posts available, and in the Microsoft community also you will get a huge amount of support for these two tools. So I have listed down the things that we need to know because, as I mentioned, they are very huge topics. It is impossible to know everything of these tools in quick time. Probably it will take 3-4 years of good amount of working knowledge to gain to become an expert of these two tools. Even I am also not aware of 100% of the facilities or the capabilities available in these two tools. I'm also keeping pace with the ever-changing ADF and Synapse tracks that Microsoft is applying. So Azure Data Factory, we will know about this more in the session. So it's mainly used for orchestration, but the orchestration pipelines, they're also available in Synapse. Whenever we talk about some tools or some services, PaaS services, platform as a service services in Azure, one of the key things that we need to take care is the deployment. So there are some certain ways how we can automate the deployment. Once the platform is available, then you start developing your pipelines, data pipelines, and then once you develop your pipelines, your objects, you need to also make sure that that pipeline is part of your CI/CD, so that whenever you are developing new things, gets deployed to QA or till production automatically. And then both Data Factory and Synapse, they have Microsoft has made sure that there are tremendous number of templates available for quick onboarding. So if you are new to Data Factory or if you are new to Synapse, there are enough number of templates available in the tool so that you can get yourself up to speed in a very quick time. Pricing is really important. I will not only cover pricing for Data Factory, but pricing also for Synapse. Monitoring, once you have deployed things in production, how do we do the monitoring? That is something important. Integration runtime, it's a very important concept. It's basically the bridge between our data. It's basically the bridge between our on-premise system and cloud. And then obviously we are talking, whenever we are talking about data warehouse project, we are talking about either ETL pipeline or ELT pipeline, where the T stands for transformation. So here in this case, how to do the transformation is something really important. And then for Synapse, Synapse is again, it's a whole tool as such. Microsoft wants to make sure that Synapse is kind of a one-stop solution for your data warehouse. So it is enriching every month or every week with various new functionalities, so that if you have Synapse, then you can, let's say, build your data warehouse and different number of use cases within that one tool itself. So there are concepts of pools. I will let you know what are the different pools. And then within the pools, the most important one and the most famous one now is dedicated pool. It's nothing but it's a data warehouse in Azure Synapse. So that's the dedicated pool. So what is Azure Data Factory? So this is okay. This is a theoretical definition. It's a data integration service that allows us to create a data-driven workflows for our orchestration and automation of data movement. Now, without let's say wasting any time, I will open a data factory. So, for example, or maybe I'll open it from here. So this is my at Microsoft portal, where let's say I can see various services, whatever all the resources and services that I have deployed, and then you can see that this is the data factory. So when you land, this is a, let's say this is a home page or this is a landing page of our data factory, and then you can do various operations in this data factory. So one of the maybe my slides are not properly organized. 1 minute, because before going into the data factory details, I would first like to explain the modern data platform. So modern data platform, the definition of a modern data platform, every organization who are, let's say, uh, they want to make their organization data driven, they have to have a modern data platform. They have to have a very core and concrete data platform setup, so that they can make sure that every decision that they take, every strategic decision that they take, it's data driven. So modern data platform as such, it can handle real-time data, because most of the advanced analytics use cases are based on real-time data. Real-time data like your, let's say, for example, your weather forecasting, or if you are a manufacturing company or if you are a product company, you have to monitor your real-time market cost. So in that case, or if you are having too many IoT devices, you might have to process the real-time data. So in that case, the data platform should be able to support real-time data for your real-time data ingestion. And then obviously the more traditional setup is we can handle historical data, huge amount of big data, and we can build a data warehouse which is non-real time. Most of the times our data warehouse are, let's say, day minus one, day minus two even, or sometimes it's also in our data warehouse, we choose some flows that we load it every 4 hours or every 5 hours, something like that. And then the third capability is that it can support data scientists. So because you need to apply a lot of algorithms to make the data more useful. So for our all data science use cases, we need to have a possibility that the raw data can be accessed by the data scientist, and then they can apply various machine learning algorithms to process that data. A modern data platform should have a very good data governance, because without governing your data, it can have poor quality, or you can end up having a very big data warehouse, but without proper governance, you might not be able to, let's say, leverage the data warehouse in a proper way. And then, of course, it should have a reporting platform, be it in any reporting platform like Power BI, which is, let's say, one of the most popular right now, but it should support any reporting in any other platform, for example, MicroStrategy or Tableau or any other reporting platform that you might be aware of. So in this modern data platform, you can see that the flow is from our left to our right. So from the source systems towards the reporting, the data should flow through, right? Now the data factory as such, it can fit for any orchestration work for the non-real-time flow. Data factory, it's, let's say, it's not a very good orchestrator for real-time flow, because it's not really it has not been built for that purpose. For our real-time flow, it can support till 1 minute frequency orchestration, but let's say if you have a IoT device, or if you have really data coming in from your Spark or Kafka streams, data factory, let's say, is not the best tool in the market to do that kind of an orchestration. It is more for our non-real-time use cases. It can support till 1 minute, but mostly it is for data warehousing, where we process day minus one data every 2 hours, every 1 hour data. Then it can go really well. And then data factory, which kind of data pipelines it support. So any data services that you have in Microsoft Azure stack, it can support all of those data pipelines. So it can call any other services written in any other Azure tool, and then it can orchestrate the data from one source system to the another, let's say, another target system. So as such, the main purpose why we use Data Factory is uh, uh, orchestrating the data from source to target. Here in source, I mean the source systems, the ERP systems of the organization, and target, essentially it would be, let's say, a reporting platform, or it can be, let's say, you source the data from a typical source system, you process it, and then you push it back to another source system as an input. That is also another use case, right? So now I think I can go back to the data factory. I will quickly remind. So these are the things that I wanted to cover, or I will cover. So I will very quickly again go to the data factory. Let's say data factory pipeline. In a minute, yeah. So here you have multiple possibilities. So as you can see, you have pipelines, right? So your I will show you another screen maybe. So I have opened another data factory for one of my customer. So here the data factory pipeline, you can see we can obviously uh, classify or categorize our pipelines into different ways. So one of the thing you must know that how to ingest data from your on-premise system uh, to your let's say to your Azure cloud. Mostly in the architecture, in a modern data platform architecture, we have let's say a data lake where we land the raw data. You have a data lake. So first use case that we have to know is to know that how do we land the data from the source system into the Azure cloud. So basically you need a data pipeline. So you can create a pipeline. So here you can create a pipeline, and then you can let's say 1 minute. in another branch. So here you can create a pipeline, and then let's say you can simply, the most common activity is your copy data activity. Once you have the copy data, you can, let's say, define your different source, or you can define source is from where you want to get the data, sync is to where you want to write the data. Okay, so that is about data pipeline. You can have, let's say here I have mentioned copy activity, but here you have a series of let's say uh, activities which you can leverage, right? So one of the thing that I mentioned, that the data factory can also call let's say other Azure services. So in this case, a Databricks notebook. So Databricks notebook, it can, you can have your Spark program written in a Spark SQL, written in a Databricks notebook. From your pipeline, let's say you copy the data into the data lake, and then you, let's say, call the notebook to process and transform the data, and then you might write the data into another target, right? So all these kind of different activities you can leverage. One of the thing that I didn't mention, one of the use of data factory, which was mentioned in the, let's say, in our agenda, is uh, is the transformation. So uh, in the ETL, so we mentioned about extraction. So data factory has the capability of extraction. One of the question that might come up, that to which all services, from which all sources data factory can select the data. So the answer is, it has, let's say, about 80%, 80 or 90 of predefined sources. So here you can see it can fetch data from other Azure services. It can fetch data, let's say, from Google or from Amazon or HBase. So basically from SAP. So basically from source databases provided by other vendors. It can process file from your local file system or from other uh, vendor files system. So it has, let's say, total 80 or 90 connectors, predefined connectors. It can connect data from an API and so on, right? So one of the main thing in your pipeline is to, let's say, create this what we know as link service, okay? And then from the link service, we need to create a data set. Data set is basically the source data, and then we have to also define a sync data set, and then between the source data and sync data we can apply, let's say, transformation. So if I go back in this pipeline, so here we have in move and transform, we have the data flow. So now within the data flow you can perform let's say, if you open this data flow, yeah, we have to create a new data flow here. 1 minute. So in the settings, yeah, first we need to, okay, here I am calling a data flow, but yeah, before that I need to create a new data flow. So if here in this project we are not using data flow, because yeah, it has let's say also its own advantages, pros and cons. Some customers, they want to use the data flow, some customers they do not want to use the data flow. So here you can add a source, and then basically after you add the source, you have this people who are working from, let's say, Informatica, Ab Initio, DataStage, all these kind of on-premise tools. And if you're new to cloud, you have, let's say, similar kind of join or lookup transformations or surrogate key transformations, which are very typical to a data warehouse environment. You can use these transformations, and then you can simply, let's say, achieve the target table. So you can read from a source table, and then you apply some transformations, and then you can write to a target table. Here, when I say table, it can be a, let's say, file in a data lake as well, or it can be a table in your Synapse or in your Azure SQL database, right? So this is how we want to do the transformations. Lot of customers, to keep things simple, they do not want to, let's say, go for various options. One of the option is, of course, we create a stored procedure in the database. We call the stored procedures for our, let's say, for doing a typical data warehouse staging and load transformation and load part. So here you also have a stored procedure possibility. You basically call the stored procedure, which can be in your Azure Synapse or Azure SQL, and then you can, let's say, call that stored procedure to write the data into the final table. One of the thing which I always say to my customers or my co-developers or co-engineers from the customer. So basically, this is a nice slide that has been created by this organization. So one of the key thing, if you know each and everything in this slide, you basically know almost, I would say, 90% of the things in Azure Data Factory. So like I mentioned, you have to create a pipeline. There you can have different activities, and then you have link services, you have data sets, or you have mapping data flows for doing your transformations, and then you finally load the data. One of the things that I didn't mention is your integration runtime. So integration runtime, let's say it's a very uh, critical thing here in this case, because let's say you have a on-premise system. Now the on-premise system is in another network than your Azure, let's say Azure network. So you need to make sure that the connectivity happens between these two networks, without which if your organization has decided that the on-premise network database will not be exposed to the Azure network, then of course it wouldn't be possible to take the data. So that connectivity should happen. So Microsoft provides that integration runtime for us. It has, let's say, mm, they will provide a self. So there are different kinds of integration runtime. So the auto-resolve integration runtime is something which is inside Azure, but then we have self-hosted integration runtime, which is something we can, let's say, download, install in a virtual machine. So once it is installed and running, then it basically allows the connection. So it's a bridge between Azure and the on-premise system. Then we can make use of that integration runtime. So I'll show you one example. So here we have made a link service, and then okay, this is not the, let's say, the best example, but for example this one, yeah. So for this link service, as you can see, we are using a self-hosted integration runtime because the database is installed in an on-premise network, whereas we want to load the data into the cloud. So that's why we needed the integration runtime. uh, if I open it, so there are, yeah, it's installed in a VM. So and then you can use basically it. Yeah, I'll quickly uh, I will quickly also show you the, let's say, the documentation, because yeah, the Microsoft has very useful documentation. Looking at the time, I am already halfway through. So for example, if you want to create a data factory, right, you can use this bicep template. So bicep is a, let's say, it's a new concept, new language which Microsoft has introduced for deploying and automating your data service deployments or any tool in Azure. So you want to deploy, but when you want to deploy, you want to make sure that you don't deploy it manually, uh, and you automate it. And if you want to, if you have to deploy, let's say, 100 data factory, of course you don't want to do it manually. So you need kind of a template. So there is ARM template. You have, let's say, here you have all the code. You can define whenever you are creating data factory, you can define all the different tags, and then you basically make use of this template to define all other data factories, or you can deploy it with the help of Bicep, which is, let's say, another language. Okay, so apart from these two options, there are other options as well. So I don't know, I think the people who are working in DevOps, they must be aware of Terraform. So Terraform is another uh, vendor who basically who are expert in DevOps. So if you say Terraform ADF deployments, so Terraform is provided by HashiCorp. So they have basically, okay, this is not the official site. So yeah, so if they have, let's say, predefined way, it's similar to ARM template. So they have defined way of deploying our Azure Data Factory. So here it's pretty easy. You just have to define the different parameters similar to ARM, and then if you set up your Terraform uh, infrastructure as a code CI/CD pipeline, it will basically call this Terraform program, and then it will deploy the Azure resource in your deploy the data factory in your Azure cloud, right? So a lot of organizations, they use Terraform for their Azure resources deployment, and it is let's say it is cloud agnostic. So that means if you have a multi-cloud environment combined with AWS and Google, then you can also you deploy AWS Google resources also with Terraform. So in that case, it would help you if you are not strict to, let's say, ARM template or bicep. uh, One of the thing that I wanted to cover for data factory, yeah, so another thing is that you have to have a CI/CD pipeline. So in Azure Data Factory, of course, it let's say it provides branching, as you saw. As you saw here, we use different feature branches, and then we have a main branch, and we have a let's say we should have a yeah we should have a ADF publish branch. So with the help of these branchings in Azure DevOps, we can basically set up a CI/CD pipeline. So that means once you change your code and once you adapt pull those changes into the main branches, and once there is an approver, once the approver approves your changes, it automatically deploys those things into the let's say into the production, at first in quality or acceptance pipeline, and then in production pipeline based on the approval of the uh, approvers. So here I'm not going too much into the detail, but again, uh, I think we have, let's say, in the data factory documentation, we have, if you go to the documentation, so here is the documentation. I'm sure we data transformation, data movement. We have CI/CD, yeah, here. So you have the continuous integration and delivery. So basically here it speaks about the CI/CD pipeline. So you are working with Git branching, you make a pull request, you publish it into the development, and then it goes to your ADF publish branch, and then with the help of the CI/CD pipeline, it goes to test or quality, and then it goes to prod. So there is some YML integration, or in the video also, in this video or in this tutorial also, you can find it. One more, is there other things? Yeah, so one of the very important thing is template. So again, if I go back here, or maybe in this one, one of the very useful thing that I was mentioning in the beginning is that you can make use of template. So you have a template gallery, right? So this is the pipeline template gallery. So for example, if you want to perform one of the, let's say, very, you can even search. So yeah. So for example, we want to create a type changing two SCD type 2 dimension. It's a very common use case in data warehouse. So basically, you can make use of this pipeline, and then yeah. So let's say you can take any of this. You have to have a link service and so on. Link service. So for a source and then for a target. So if we use this template, so in this case, you see it creates a data flow, and then if you open the data flow, it basically, you see it has a let's say all the required transformations needed created in a, let's say, a couple of seconds, and then you can see that okay, in your it is actually then creating a dimension table which, let's say, has this SCD type to feature enabled, right? So this is how you can make use of the template, I think. uh, and one of the another feature is here. So let's say you have created a pipeline. It is very well possible that from this pipeline you can, if I go to the again, if I go again to the pipeline, so you can basically uh, create a template from that pipeline. I think here in this case it is not showing, but let me open another one. Uh, it would be possible. Normally, it would be possible. Yeah, here is the option. My bad. So here you can save this pipeline as a you can save this pipeline as a save as template, and then you can basically use this template in another projects of yours, right? So that's the importance of the templates. Templates again I will cover during Synapse. I see time is going very fast. Monitor. So here basically you can monitor your pipeline runs. I will show you. So here if you see, so some of the activities has failed, some of them has let's say passed. Mm, yeah, it's a development one, so it doesn't have anything. But then if you open the pipeline, you will see it doesn't have many things. But if I open probably a production one, you will see many things. Here it simply copies the data. You see, it basically shows the data. But if it is a failure, you would be able to, let's say, monitor the failure. There are some Azure monitor alerts and metrics which you can create. It is, let's say, in 2 minutes you can create an alert where if a pipeline fails, you would be able to monitor it. You would be able to, you will not get notified by an email. So you can set it up with Azure Monitor, which is another service. But then Azure provides Azure Log Analytics for monitoring of your service. So if you configure it well in your Azure Log Analytics, then you can gain much more insight in case you want to really go deep for a problem that you might have in your production system, in your production pipeline. So everything I mentioned for the pricing, I don't think Data Factory, let's say it comes with a very high price. I don't exactly remember the pricing, but for that I can always check Azure Cost Analytics, or of course you have Azure Pricing Calculator. So yeah, here, so it's as you can see the Data Factory orchestration. So here it's very minimal pricing that you have to let's say you have to pay, right? So it's very for your orchestration. Yeah, there you have different activities like I mentioned. You have orchestration activity, you have data movement activity, and so on. So your pricing is minimal, and I think one of the very clear way in this case, I think for Data Factory it is not needed that you reserve some capacity, but I will mention that in Synapse. So I think for Data Factory, yeah, I'm okay if let's say if you take this screenshot, right? And if you can cover everything from this page, that means you are, let's say, 90% of the things in Data Factory. Or you can also try to see all these topics. Very good documentation available in this. So especially, so here how to create a data factory as but apart from creation, you see you have a lot of tutorials, and then you have a lot of how-to guides. So these how-to guides and the tutorials are really the ones from where I learned about data factory, right? People who are from SSIS background, Microsoft SSIS background, I think, yeah, not think, but there are predefined templates where you can simply lift and shift your SSIS into your Microsoft Azure cloud. So that's also very useful for people working now with SSIS packages. Time is really running out, so 20 minutes. I will again show the, let's say here, this picture. So as you can see, we mentioned about, let's say, modern data platform, and normally all people who have been working with a traditional data warehouse or who are also now working new in a data warehouse, Microsoft positions Synapse that it's the best tool for data warehousing. So we have predominantly Synapse as such, it's one platform, one integrated platform with much more capabilities than just data warehousing. But then it is most popular for its data warehouse use, where you basically create your data warehouse in your Synapse. Uh, yeah, this, yeah. So I think without wasting any time, um, yeah, we mentioned about let's say data factory pipelines and data factory data flows to transform our data. So here again, so Synapse, it provides, let's say it has four different kind of pools. So one is the most popular one is the SQL dedicated pool, and then you have a serverless pool, you have a Spark pool, and then a new one which is still in preview is your Data Explorer pool, right? Uh, each of them has different purpose. So your dedicated pool, it's basically the where you create the data warehouse. So basically where you load your multiple fact tables and multiple dimension tables. So that is really your semantic layer. Serverless pool is something which is, let's say, it's a virtualized thing. It's a virtual layer. You basically have the data into the data lake, but then with the help of your serverless pool, what you can do is query the data lake directly instead of uh, physically storing the data into your dimensions and facts, right? So it gives a tremendous possibility for our end users or for our data analysts to make ad hoc analysis directly on top of the data lake data. That means you don't have to persist your data and you don't have that storage cost for persisting the data. Spark pool, as the name suggests, it's more for more advanced use cases. It's basically gives the possibility to do the coding with Spark, right? Spark SQL or Spark Python, PySpark, and it's more fit for the data science use cases or machine learning use cases. And then Data Explorer pool is something which is still in feature, I think, uh, which is coming up. So, I mean, the big picture for Azure Synapse Analytics, again, if you talk about a modern data platform, and let's say if you are working like a Azure data engineer, but if you know Synapse end to end, let's say the, you can do a lot of things with Azure Synapse. Knowing Azure Synapse will also take a significant amount of time, but it has few capabilities. So the data factory pipelines that you just saw, the orchestration capability, Microsoft has ensured that those pipelines are also embedded within Synapse itself. So that means, let's say, if you do not need, if you are building a small data warehouse or a big data warehouse where you do not need data factory, standalone data factory, you can use the orchestration capability of Synapse itself. It's exactly the same. But yeah, Microsoft initially started it with Data Factory, and now they have ensured that those features are also available within Synapse. Just to make Synapse more, let's say, more a one-stop solution that you are always working with one tool. And then, as I said, it has, let's say, four pools, the Data Explorer pools for, let's say, near real-time telemetric network level analytics. Spark pool, where you are working with a data lake, working for the machine learning and the data scientist work can be done here. And then we have serverless pool and dedicated pool. Serverless pool is more to query the data directly on top of our uh, data lake. You can basically create some virtualized facts and dimensions. It's only the query, but then at the end, the data will only be stored in the data lake. That's also another way to go. Or you finally have the dedicated pool. So in the big picture, as you can see, it's basically it has the orchestration capability, and then it basically uh, flows the data into these several pools and then stores the data into the data warehouse. Aside, it has the capability to take the data from Azure Stream Analytics, from Data Lake, and so on. It can provide the communicate with machine learning and so on, right? And it can then publish the data either to, let's say, your Power BI or towards your other data services that you have created, right? Quickly going into the, let's say, into the Synapse portal. So this is your Synapse portal. Looks quite similar to what we have in Azure, let's say, Data Factory. So here you can see it also has pipeline capabilities. If you create, let's say, a new pipeline, you have the similar kind of activities. So I would not go into those, right? I would not go into the same activities. Instead, what I'll do, so here I will, let's say, do the gallery. And now, so first of all, here you have the pipeline templates, which you already covered in Data Factory. Then the most interesting things are these four tabs. So you have SQL scripts. People who have learned Python in their universities, colleges, less aware of SQL, you can basically make use of these beautiful templates. So for example, somebody wants to create an external table. You just select that, you continue, you get that T-SQL generated automatically, right? Which is, let's say, pointing to your data lake. So that's how you basically create it. Or you want to apply column level security in a table which is in a dedicated SQL pool, you have the T-SQL generated. So very good support for SQL scripts. Notebooks, somebody who is traditionally from a SQL background like me, less aware of Python and PySpark things, they can make use of this notebook. Here, as you can see, you have notebooks in various languages. Most common are PySpark and Spark SQL, but Scala and Spark .NET is also important. So for example, one of the most used, I think, yeah, Delta Lake, I think it's a very new concept. Not so new, but yeah, it's still very popular. So getting started with Delta Lake, you want to learn how to get started with the Delta Lake with the PySpark code. You basically it generates the code for you, like how you have it in your Databricks notebook as well, and then you can let's say learn about it, right? Uh, so you have a lot of different templates. Data sets. So here again, uh, so one of the things that we are starting, we are learning new things. So for leveraging all these things for learning, for our practical learning, we always need a data set. So where do I get those data sets? Normally in online, you can get data sets, open data sets from various other platform, but Microsoft has ensured that when you have Synapse, you basically have, let's say, these data sets available to you. So for example, you want New York City taxi and limousine, you want to use this data set, very well, go ahead. You see that it has 500 million of records with these columns. So in fact, you add this data set and then you basically have this data set available to you, right? Uh, where is this data set? We should have a, yeah. So you see sample data set, NYC, that's this thing, and then you simply select the data. It is pointing to a data lake, and then it will show you the data, let's say in minutes. You see, so this is how easy you can get the data set, and then you can make your own pipeline to read this data and then write it to a table in a dedicated pool, right? I'll delete this. All right. And the last thing that I wanted to share as part of template. So uh, yeah, browse gallery. So database template. So Microsoft has recently acquired a company which was, let's say, experts in creating data models, database for different various industries. So, for example, somebody who is working with the retail industry, you want to have a, let's say, how should my tables be created in for the retail industry? You, let's say, choose that template. So now your tables are getting populated. So you see that you now have a number of tables, but give it a couple of seconds. So here now for retail, you see then within retail, you have, let's say, shipping data, you have training and education data, you have manufacturing data and so on. So even HR data, you have customer data, let's say it's irrespective of industry, you always have customer data, right? So customer contract, for example, or customer email. You select these tables, and then you select these tables. You basically create the data set, and then it will create that data set. So here you can already get an idea, like if you have an employee table, what are the fields that you should be expecting in a customer email table, and so on. So these templates are also very useful, which you can, let's say, use it very quickly. So these are about the templates. Now I think I have 10 more minutes where, let's say, I have shown you the big picture. One of the thing that you need to know is when to use which pool or what's the differences. So I think differences I already mentioned. So yeah, one of the main difference between dedicated pool and serverless pool uh, is let's say for dedicated pool you can control the compute, right? So for example, you have a data warehouse where you are loading the tables in a dedicated pool. You need, let's say, or you are reading the tables from a dedicated pool, so there you can control it. Basically you can multiply your compute, so you can scale out your compute, or you can, let's say, reserve your compute for a separate user group. So for example, you have a report for a CEO, you want the highest possible reaction time for that report. You then create a group, which in Synapse we call it as a workload group. So you create that workload group, you assign a highest priority whenever, and you always reserve 10% capacity of your dedicated pool for that group. So whenever CEO runs a report, that report has the highest priority. It gets the data within seconds, and then the report will be visible. So things like that, they are controllable in dedicated pool, whereas in your serverless pool, you don't have to scale in or scale out. It takes care of it automatically. Scaling is done automatically, and here it's a paper query. So serverless, you don't have to configure those things, but then also you cannot control it, right? And then you have Spark pools, which is, let's say, more for, as I mentioned several times, data science and machine learning use cases. You have Data Explorer pools, which is still in preview, I think, and which is more for our real-time network related data. When to use it? So if we have, let's say, if we really have to persist a huge amount of facts and dimensions, which is typically the case, we suggest our customers to go for dedicated pool, persist the data, and then go for reporting. Serverless pool, if you want to create a logical data warehouse, virtualized data warehouse, then you can go for serverless pool. You can do basic data exploration without having the data loaded in data warehouse facts and dimensions. People can do some ad hoc checks on the data. You can do data transformation with serverless pools as well. Spark I already mentioned, and Data Explorer pool also I already mentioned. So apart from this, now for Synapse, there are a couple of things which I would mention. So if I go here, so as you can see here, so I have one dedicated pool, right, which is currently online, right, but nobody is using it, for example. So I am paying for this DW100C, which is the, let's say, the compute unit, which is the lowest possible compute unit. Now in Synapse, it's a costly, Synapse dedicated pools are costly, right? So there you really don't want your Synapse to keep it up and running if it is not used, right? So in that case, you can pause it. Here I have the pause button. I can pause it, and then I am saving my cost, right? So the Synapse hourly costing is also dedicated pricing. So here also you can see that it's actually, yeah, if you are not using it, it costs. So yeah, this is when you reserve it. So one of the another way to save some cost is if you know that you are going to use Synapse for, let's say, another 2 years, and for a specific committed unit, then you can get a discount from Microsoft, things like that. Okay, so this is a pre-purchase plan. Is this hourly cost? So there is a hourly cost. I think it's like, is it mentioned here? No, I don't think it's mentioned here. 1 minute. Normally it should be mentioned here, but yeah, we can also see the cost in our, let's say, in our cost analytics. So it's the more compute you use, so it can go till, let's say, yeah, if I again go, and then if I go to my SQL pool, you have the possibility to scale. and you can really go till, let's say, yeah, here you can see the price. So right now I'm paying 1.2 euro per hour, but then if I go till, let's say, 3000, which is to 30,000, which is let's say maximum capacity, you see the cost. It really goes really high. So you really want to manage your Synapse dedicated pool carefully. A very good functionality that Synapse has right now, it's you can from a data factory pipeline, you can pause and resume your Synapse. So for example, if your data warehouse jobs are running between it takes 4 hours, and you plan that it starts in the midnight, it goes for 4 hours, you can basically, before your job, you can resume the Synapse dedicated pool, and then after, once the jobs are finished, you can basically pause it, right? I know there are several side questions that would come up, like if I have a query which is on Synapse, directly doing on Synapse, what are the things to do? Again, for example, for your batch, you might need a certain compute unit, but then for your those ad hoc queries, you might scale it down to a very low compute unit, right? So all different kinds of possibilities are possible. In fact, I would quickly show you. So you can basically pause it, and then you can also scale it up or scale it down to a certain compute unit. So all these things are possible with dedicated pool, and we always suggest customer to make use of these capabilities. And then I think one last thing that I would want to mention here is the Spark pool. So here you can see one of the difference between Spark pool and dedicated pool is that Spark pool, you can, let's say, it is also costly. We also have to use it carefully. But then if it has, let's say, auto scaling enabled, right? And yeah, automatic pausing is also enabled. So that means auto scaling is also enabled. So that means if you are not using it for 15 minutes, so here I have set it up as 15 minutes. If you're not using it for 15 minutes, it will auto pause it, and then basically you are saving the cost, right? For Synapse dedicated pool, I think Microsoft will come to that settings as well, but till now they have not enabled that yet. And then for Synapse Spark pool, as you can see, you can have several notebooks, so SQL scripts and notebooks. So here, for example, we have, let's say, created a Synapse notebook. Give it a couple of seconds and it should appear. So yeah, here you can see we are basically doing some Spark functions with PySpark, and then we are processing the data and loading it into the, let's say, into the final table. So yeah, I think, yeah, last but not the least, if you go to Synapse documentation, for example, so here Synapse as such, it has, let's say, Synapse, it's an overall integration platform. So there you have mentioned about SQL pool, data explorer pool, and so on. So this is the overall documentation. But then Synapse today is most popular for its dedicated pool, right? So you have a separate documentation for your dedicated pool where you can also see the different things. And one of the most important things in dedicated pool is this how to guide. So your workload management, and I think in so your workload management plus uh, there is in Synapse, it is very important to take care of the performance of the big, let's say, big fact tables. So there in Synapse, you have to understand really the partitioning, because it's, let's say, Synapse. That's key for your performance. So yeah, it's also in the dedicated pool. It's in the concept development and tables. Yeah, so here you have the data is basically, it's a columnar database, right? So how you partition the data, it's really important. So for your large fact tables, you can have a fact table of 300 million records or 1 billion record. It will work very well if you define your partitioning properly, partitioning and indexing properly, right? So this part, so your distribution, your indexing, your partitioning, and also, let's say, statistics. If you manage these four, you would be able to gain a lot of performance things in your Synapse dedicated pool. So yeah, with that, I think I will close it here, and it's also time. I